Everyone. Firstly, I want to thank you all for joining us today. My name is Monisha Henley. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs at Everytown for Gun Safety. Throughout Black History Month, Everytown has been engaging in conversations with some Black leading voices in the gun safety movement who are running for office, participating in the electoral process, and really championing this important movement. Last week, my colleague Michaela Jordan was in a conversation with Jaheim McLaurin, one of our distinguished leaders who participate in Demand a Seat, the Students Edition, a program created to empower volunteers and Moms Demand Action and Students Demand Action to run for office and to help manage campaigns, because we all know elected officials have incredible staff behind them. We continue to invite you all to keep joining us during these impactful discussions. But today, I have the incredible honor of getting to sit down and talk with Florida State House of Representative and Minority Leader, Fentrice Driskell. Welcome, Representative Driskell.
Hi, Monisha. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And I think it would be great for everybody to hear a little bit more about you and how you've engaged in gun violence prevention as a champion and what led you to run for office.
Wonderful. Well, again, I appreciate being in this space. So as was mentioned, I'm Fentrice Driskell. I have the honor of serving as the Democratic leader in the Florida House of Representatives. And you might be wondering, there are Democrats in Florida? Yes, it's true. I promise you we're here and we have a pulse and we serve as the party of opposition to try to hold the majority party accountable and to push for transparency and to push for the common sense gun laws that we all want to see. My caucus believes that every Floridian deserves the freedom to be healthy, prosperous, and safe. And that's what we fight for each and every day, because safety certainly means that opportunity to go worship at your place of worship, to go to the grocery store, to send your kid to school and not have to worry about threats of gun violence. So I'm a Florida native. I grew up in Lakeland, which is in Central Florida, like between Tampa and Orlando. Those were our two big cities. And I was inspired to care about government actually as a high school girl. I did a program known as Florida Girl State. It completely inspired me. I learned about government at every level. And I learned about how government can help improve people's lives for the better. And so that seed was planted when I was 17 years old, and I held onto it for a very long time in terms of what actually motivated me to like jolt me out of complacency and to run. It was the 2016 election. I watched that election and I watched as neighbors were no longer able to talk to neighbors about politics or just things that mattered. I watched as our politics became so divisive in our country. That's how it felt to me. And I just felt like I feel like people deserve better, right? Like people deserve folks who are going to get in there and fight. Yes, I'm a Democrat, but I'm willing to work with anybody who's willing to work for me or work with me. And I want to try to really find solutions. So that's the approach that I brought to my campaign. That's the same approach that I use with respect to governing when it comes to looking at the bills that come across my desk and thinking through the bills that I file. Like, for example, this year, I have a gun violence prevention community task force that we're looking to get started so that we can help keep our community safer. So that's a little bit about me and why I decided to run for office.
Thank you so much. I love your Girl State mention. I'm also a Girl State alum from Delaware.
Wait
Yes.
a minute. So I was
Um,
governor. I was governor of Girl State. And I just
I
got to
was a
tell the,
senator,
you were senator. Okay.
and I definitely was there. It was like where I just really appreciated the power of debate.
Hmm.
And I think a piece that sometimes feels really wonky is like taking advantage of the electoral process and like parliamentary procedure and using it to your advantage. And I'm sure as minority leader in Florida, you are looking at the rules all the time and looking at ways that you can kind of like push them in the right direction.
That's right. That's what you have to do.
Yes. So just following up on that, as you're running for office, what were a couple of things that surprised you?
You know what's interesting? I think, and someone told me this, a former city commissioner told me this, and I actually agree. He said that every American should run for office at least once because it will completely change our politics overnight. And I didn't know what he meant when he told me because it was at the start of my journey, but now I get that. I think what surprises me is that you just don't know how much goes into it, regardless of if the candidate is in your party or not. If they're in it for the right reasons, and I believe that many people are, there's some others who we can debate about offline. Okay, I'll tell you. But seriously, when people are in it for the right reasons and they're trying so hard, it's a sacrifice. You have to, be time away from your family, time away from your day job, right? You're out in your community, but at times you feel like you're missing things because you're always out in the community. And so you're not, kind of like maybe as focused as you could be before running for office on different things in your life. And so that was surprising to me. I knew it would be hard work, but I didn't know just how sweeping it would be in terms of how many areas of your life that it impacts. The second thing that was surprising but also really wonderful is that it is still possible to talk to our neighbors, folks,
Mhm.
because part of being a good candidate is knocking on the doors in your neighborhood, and you
Mhm.
want to talk to folks and you want to introduce yourself. Yes, you have to ask them for them to vote for you, but you also should try to hear and listen. What is
Mhm.
important to you? And I was
Mhm.
just always amazed by the kindness of strangers, people who might offer you a cool drink of water on a hot day. Lord knows it gets hot in Florida. And so those are two things that were kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, I think it's so important to remember that it's not just the commercials you see on TV. It's really like hitting the pavement, knocking on doors, getting to know your community, and that all politics really is local. And when you're making that human connection, that really makes a big difference.
That's right.
Um, with with that said, you are in a re-election movement right now, and you have prioritized gun safety, gun violence prevention. I would love to hear how you have kind of married that into your re-election campaign, as well as acknowledging that Florida is not always thinking gun violence prevention first.
Yeah, listen, I would say some folks in Florida are not thinking that, but I got to tell you, back to that point of being out in the community, like in my district, when I'm out and I'm talking to folks, there are a few things that they want to talk about, property insurance, housing affordability, right? Like personal freedoms, but they also are very concerned about gun violence and making sure that we have common sense gun laws. And so as I think about how I serve and represent my district and indeed the entire state, but in specifically this district, I have to give voice to the issues that are most important to them. And safety is a big part of that. I'll also say that as Democratic leader, part of my responsibility is not just running and winning my own race, but also
Mhm.
helping to run and win races so that we can expand the number of Democrats that are in the legislature. Right now in Florida, Democrats are in the super minority, but that's okay. I fundamentally believe that we will get out of it because
Mhm.
we've been talking about the issues that matter most to the people. And I
Mhm.
think right now we're in a time in American politics where folks don't think that government cares about them. They don't think that government listens to them. And so we're trying to change that narrative one seat at a time here in the Florida House Democratic Caucus and making sure that what we put forward as our priority bills resonates with our neighbors. And in fact, if I were to share our platform with you, I would tell you all about our common sense gun ownership law that talks
Mhm.
about things like universal background checks, safe storage laws, all sorts of things that we should be able to agree with, whether you whatever side of the issue that you're on, we should all be able to agree on those common sense solutions.
Thank you for that. And I'd actually love to kind of dive in a little deeper, specifically on the gun laws that exist in Florida. I think today
Mm.
we can acknowledge that we are on coming up on the mark of the Parkland shooting on a very historical gun safety package that passed with bipartisan support, signed into law by a Republican governor. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about where you think the gun violence movement is in Florida, where the gun laws are in Florida, and kind of maybe a preview of what you think is to come.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And my heart goes out to the Parkland community and to all the families that were impacted by that shooting in 2018. And that was just around the time when I jumped into the race to run for a House seat. And I can remember after that shooting, there was just this most incredible bipartisan moment where you had
Mhm.
Republicans and Democrats come together and say, okay, enough is enough. We want to strengthen Florida's gun law so a tragedy like this never happens again. But then I've watched Monisha year after year and legislative session after legislative session where the Republicans who are in control, the majority, I should say, move further and further away from
Mhm.
that promise. And to me, that is just so heartbreaking. And I can't imagine how it must feel to those families who look to the legislature for leadership, right?
Mhm.
And so, examples of how those promises have been broken. Last year, the Republican majority passed a permitless carry bill. so that in Florida, you no longer have to have any training in order to carry a concealed weapon. It does nothing to make our communities safer. In fact, I would say it makes them less safe, and it just continues to buy into this vigilanteism that we have in Florida, like this mythology around it, and it's just not healthy. There's a bill this year actually that would lower the age. Let me make sure I get this right. It reduces the minimum age for firearm purchases to 18, right? Like, what are we actually
Mhm.
talking about here? Our kids should be focused on whatever they're going to do and be in life. Are they going to go to college? They want to get a professional trade. What is it? We shouldn't be worried about how do we get firearms into their hands faster. So that's a little taste of what's been happening in Florida. I think it is a wrong-headed direction because it's
Mhm.
not just Parkland, it's Pulse. And it's not just
Mhm.
Pulse, it was the shooting in Jacksonville.
Mhm.
And it just, the list goes on and on of the
Mhm.
heartbreak that has occurred in our state at the hands of gun violence.
Yep. And I think that is leads us to such a, important discussion on them having folks like you who are playing defense day in and day out. And would love to hear a little bit about your strategy, how you stay motivated, who you're partnering with, and how you really continue to push back on, I think, some of these very dangerous policies that have come up.
Yeah, well, you know what? Even though we're in the minority, we have a bully pulpit. I have a bully pulpit and I am not afraid to use it. Just a few weeks ago, we had Congressman Maxwell Frost in Tallahassee. He's the first Gen Z member of
Mhm.
Congress. He represents a district in the Orlando area. He represents it so well. I'm honored to call him a friend. And he came here to Tallahassee so that we could have, well, we did more than this, but a big centerpiece of his time here was so that we could have a large press conference. Everytown participated in it. It was Moms Demand Action Days at the Capitol. And we let the people know what we fight for and the clear difference between those in the minority caucus versus those in the majority caucus and who wants to protect communities from gun violence. So we
Mhm.
have to get creative. We have to use our social media. We have to use op-eds. We get as creative as we can using this strategy in the press because I think that the people are with us. I think there are more people who feel reasonably minded about this than not. And we have to make sure that that message is then going to translate when we need electoral victories come November. And I believe that it can.
I love that. I think you're absolutely right. And it kind of just takes us back to the beginning of this conversation. You said the importance of engaging your community, talking to them and listening to them. And with that, I want to talk a little bit more about that community engagement piece. We know that there are incredible Black-led grassroots organizations that are working on the ground with you. Would love to hear how you've partnered with them. And if you would like to name a few of those organizations that are doing this incredible work on gun violence prevention.
Yeah, thank you for giving me that opportunity to uplift these powerful organizations. I'll uplift a couple. The first is Equal Ground. Equal Ground is just this amazing organization led by Jasmine Burney Clark and her team. They work so diligently to make sure that they are educating communities around the state and educating Black voters around the state about what is happening in Tallahassee. And I will tell you this, and I tell voters this all the time. There is nothing more than a politician is afraid of than an educated voter who's not afraid to use their vote.
Mhm.
Voting is what moves our democracy. It's what allows me to be in office. It's what allows all of this to happen. And it is a powerful, powerful tool. And so Equal Ground does a particularly good job of having days at the Capitol, making sure people are well informed, not just during legislative session, but all throughout the year. So love partnering with them. And then I'll also shout out Hillsborough Safe and Sound. That's led by Mr. Freddie Barton in Hillsborough County. He does a lot of work, particularly with young people out in the community and trying to help solve gun violence problems at the roots. A lot of it does stem from our young people. We've seen it in the Hillsborough County area, especially during the summertime when kids may not have summer jobs or anything to do. The gun violence tends to tick up, and his organization really tries very hard to bring that down.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. And I think it's so important to have youth engagement to make sure people remember and never take for granted the importance of voting and acknowledging that there was time in our recent past where voting was not a privilege for all of us.
Yeah.
So we have to keep showing up, keep using our voices. This is Black History Month, and a big part of Black History Month to me is about Black excellence. And so I'd
Mm.
love to hear a little bit about Black leaders, Black legends that have inspired you in your journey.
Oh, absolutely. So it's interesting we'd be having this conversation. So last week we celebrated the life of Gwen Sawyer Cherry, who was the first Black woman to serve in the Florida legislature. And she was elected back in the 70s. And it is just amazing that in the time that she was elected, there have been fewer than 50 Black women elected overall to the Florida legislature in that time. And I am so honored and humbled to get to be one of them and to continue in her footsteps and in that legacy. I have a few pictures of her in my office, and they keep me motivated and keep me going. One, she's marching for the Equal Rights Amendment, trying to fight for equal rights for women. And it's just such a powerful image, and it motivates me. I'd also love to uplift Senator Arthenia Joyner, who served the legislature in the Tampa Bay area for a number of years. She also was the first Black woman to serve as leader in the Senate, Democratic leader in the Senate, the first Black woman really to lead either party in the Senate, just as I am the first Black woman to lead either party in the House. And so I got to spend a little time with her this weekend, actually, and she keeps me motivated and going as well.
Oh, that's incredible. And I love that these are, truly trailblazers and help put you on the path that you're on today, and that you have an opportunity to stay connected, like you said, with the Senate leadership. That's incredible.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are thinking about running for office, and I think that is a big part of not just us engaging in the process by being voters, but also taking that next step to being the representative. And would love to hear some advice that you would share with somebody who's looking to run for office.
Absolutely. So if service is in your heart, and you know that you know that you know that it is in your heart, and you are willing to do this, you're willing to put yourself out there in the public marketplace because you believe you have something to offer, and that thing in you, it just won't sit still, it won't let it go. You probably know that you're meant to run for office. It's not easy, but it is possible. And like anything worth doing, there are going to be some challenges, but just know that those challenges don't have to be insurmountable. My first bit of advice: don't go it alone. Reach out to organizations in your area and get plugged in, because particularly in the center left ecosystem, we have to be smart with our resources. In Florida, at least, we don't have as much money to compete with the other side. And that's okay. You don't have to have the most, you just have to be competitive. But definitely reach out to your local party, reach out to local organizations that might uplift particular candidates. Like if you're a woman, reach out to Emily's List or Ruth's List, or all the lists that want to help you. Reach out to Collective PAC if you're a Black candidate. There are Latino organizations, there are LGBTQ. There's something for everybody. So make sure that you're not going it alone. Get connected, because we want to make sure that we're as smart as possible with our resources. And then the second thing I would say is just recognize that there's no perfect time. I waited a long time, Monisha, just looking for the perfect time, if this, then that, and maybe I could just, no. If that service is in your heart, just look for the optimal time. It may not be perfect, but try to get things in order as best you can, so that you can take the leave of absence from work or whatever it is that you need to do, and just do it, because your soul won't rest until you do. I promise you that.
It's so true. You just got to do it. Thank you so much for that advice. I think now we should have a little bit of fun since
Okay.
we're on the heels of the Super Bowl. Who do you think is the best halftime performance ever?
Oh, that's easy. It might not be easy.
Is it easy? Is it easy?
Listen, I'm like, okay, can I give the top three in any particular order, or
Yeah,
I got to
let's
pick
do a
one?
top three.
Top
I feel
three?
like a top three is fair.
Okay. Okay. If I'm doing my top three, you got to go with the one that started it all, which is Michael Jackson, right? Because
Yes. Yes.
there was no such thing really as a big halftime show before him. So
Yes.
that was huge.
Yes.
Um, my second is going to be Prince, because Prince
Yes.
and he brought
Yes.
it
It is
down.
the legend. Yes.
Yeah. I think that one it was actually rainy, and he did Purple Rain like in the rain.
Mhm.
You remember that?
Yep.
That's wild.
Was that when Prince was still Prince, or was it formerly known as, and that's when we got the guitar with the symbol?
I think he
But it
was
definitely
still
was raining.
Prince. It was definitely
Yeah.
raining. Um, and then my third would be Beyonce, because she's queen, right? And
Yeah.
then
And literally broke the stadium.
right. And then my fourth that you didn't ask for is Bruno Mars.
Whoa. So you're saying Usher did not even make it in the top four?
I think Usher did a great job. Don't get me wrong. He was phenomenal. And like when Ludacris and her came out, and Lil Jon. I mean, it was a great performance. It was a great performance. I think it's so recent, like I'm thinking like back, but Usher certainly did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I would say that I think your top three match my top three. But I'm like still really motivated right now by Usher, so I
Yeah.
would maybe bump him into the top four.
Yeah, he was really good. And he's got a new album out. Like just the
Oh
way
yeah.
that he coordinated all of that right off of his Vegas residency and then
Oh,
it
it's
was
so
in
good.
Vegas. It's pretty masterful. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's put him in the top five then.
yeah, definitely top five. We can debate over four or five. I was definitely looking to buy concert tickets as I was watching. I was like, where do I need to
Yeah,
go? Where
yeah,
is he touring? I will be there.
yeah. The brother
Um,
was on skates. The brother was on skates. I was like, do it in
And
your
I think
40s,
this is
Usher.
it's so important to acknowledge, right? When you are a public official, an elected official, your job is really, really hard. And I
Mm,
wanted to wrap it up with some fun because I think we can just acknowledge that you have to be able to laugh a little bit to
yeah,
do some of this work. So thank you so much for your time today and this incredible conversation. And for everybody who's watching, if you are interested in connecting with your local Moms Demand Action chapter, please feel free to text ready to 64433. And we will be having another conversation next week with Mayor Brandon Scott of Baltimore from Maryland. So feel free to join in. Representative Driscoll, thank you again. Look forward to working with you more in this session.